I really wanted to continue playing Genshin. Until today, even though Genshin has a lot of issues, it was still my favorite game and arguably still better than Wuthering Waves, even though I created a video on how Wuthering Waves storytelling is so much better than Genshin. But that is another topic for another day. The thing is, I genuinely wanted to create a video on why I love and still want to play Genshin because I really have an attachment to it. When I first saw Genshin, I was just kind of like, everyone's just overhyping it. Like I just didn't get the hype. I didn't get why everyone was like swooning over Genshin. And it wasn't until Death Slave appeared that I finally played the game. And I'm not gonna lie, the nostalgia is still there. And as much as I would love to talk about why I love and want to play Genshin, the devs have really ruined the game for me. It started with the interlude quest. They created a trailer that was amazing, talking about how Albedo seemed to be destroying Mondstadt, which was everything that I was waiting for. I've been waiting for a new Albedo quest since 2.3, which is 2 years ago. And during my wait, I've actually been trying to summon for Albedo, which I lost twice and finally gained on my final pull during his Chronicle Wish banner. So now with Albedo and his Cinnabar Spinel, which I got because I was dumb and didn't know about events, that kind of saved my life in a sense. I'm just so disappointed at how they carried out Albedo's story. When I watched the trailer, I was so excited because in the 2.3 trailer, they literally showed us, how Bennett is gonna fight Albedo, and everything happened. I tried to rewatch the 2.3 trailer again, and everything that's been advertised actually match up to the story. In fact, the story is actually better than the trailer itself. So when the two so when the interlude quest came along and the trailer is better than the story itself, it just kind of baffled me. The thing is, when the trailer first came out, I knew that it was going to be anticlimactic. All right. I mean, I've played the Lantern Right quest, and I knew that they're going to make it like, oh, Albedo is a murderer and stuff like that, and everything is just going to be fine. He's going to be fine. He didn't do anything wrong, and everyone's going to be good, happy, life goes on. That was the anticlimactic that I was expecting. It's anticlimactic, but I could deal with that because the story still goes on, and whatever is supposed to happen happens. But that was not the case. When I watched the trailer, I genuinely loved the scene of Venti holding his bow because for the longest time playing Genshin, we rarely see Venti with him holding his weapon. We rarely see Venti pulling his bowstrings and summoning his powers. The only time we remotely saw that was probably him playing the lyre with the dragon, like the Valin when we first entered into Genshin, which is an amazing cutscene. Honestly, I still love the old Genshin cutscenes until this day, but that's another story for another day. You get the idea. So, for someone that is so carefree, a drunken like Venti, to finally hold a weapon, it made me think like, hey, there must be something big going on. It doesn't have to be Albedo being evil and destroying everything, as the story has always been trying to make it out to be. It could just be Venti summoning his whirlpool to get out the healer chills. That was what I was expecting. And I was just so disappointed when the actual story not only did not give us that scene, Venti did not do stuff at all. The only thing he did was summon winds, just so that Albedo could communicate with his friends, and then his minions, like the Valin's minions, wouldn't listen to it. I get it. Some people are gonna say, "Kid, a trailer is a trailer. It doesn't have to be accurate to the story." I agree with that because to some extent plot twist happens and sometimes new develop new ideas come along the way when you write stories, and yeah, it's true because there's some scenes that maybe authors want to redesign or like refine to improve their experience, but that's not the case that was happening here. When I heard the trailer ending off with like Venti saying that this feeling it's close, like I was expecting something to be more, like, I was expecting something dramatic. I was expecting something really exciting, but the story did not deliver that. I guess the best part of the story was actually Albedo being accused of being a murderer because he willingly allowed himself to be accused. Like honestly, that was the only part that I feel like Albedo wasn't really a garage to. Other than that, I don't see him struggling. Venti just puts his trust in him, even though the trailer literally seems like Venti is going to fight. Like yeah, maybe they could just be doing it to hype people up. When the trailer came out, there are haters that say that they are just hyping up the old players up, those people that quit. And at first I was on Hoyover's side. I was like, man, nah, I don't think that they're hyping it up just so that the old players would join back, and so that all the Albedo lovers will finally get the justice that they have got, like they deserved for waiting for 2 years. No, they didn't. They baited us big time. Yes. And in order to see whether or not I mistook the story and find that it's shit, wasting my hours staying up to 2 a.m. just to play the story, I read the story in Chinese. I read the story about 2 times in English, even more if you will. I compared it with like the 2.3 story to see if I'm missing out anything. And yeah, well, it is true that Albedo is a cold-hearted, merciless person, as you can tell from his usual dialogues. Like he's not flirty, and you know has that kind of friendly demeanor like child. But expected to see more. Like Albedo is just saying that the altercation led him to kill his brother. Well, that's cool, but I don't see the dialogue between Negredo, which I will call whom I would call as Albedo's brother for easy reference. Like I want to see Negredo and Albedo arguing. I want to see Negredo crying in front of Albedo saying like why does our mom love you more than me. The fact is Albedo did grapple with that in the 2.3 event. He did say that if they switched places, if Nigredo was a survivor, then he would try to do everything that Nigredo is doing right now. And that was literally like about an hour in towards the ending, which was like really exciting because we see Albedo unsheathing his sword, and stuff like that. I was expecting a cutscene. I'm not sure whether people were expecting a cutscene, but because 2.3 delivered the fight scenes so well, I was expecting something similar. I even saw YouTuber artists drawing, like I literally see Instagram artists drawing Albedo fighting each other, which is honestly so cool. You could say that 2.3 already have that. We don't need a round two, but I would argue otherwise. I would love to see Albedo talking about how he doesn't agree with what his mom did, and how he feels bad for Negredo. The thing is, Albedo was only loved because he's perfect. Like Ryan the Tor, whom I'll call Ryan for easy reference. Like Ryan literally wanted Albedo to discover the truth of this world, and for the longest time, Albedo is questioning his own humanity. He's questioning his own characteristics. We see that a lot in the previous quests, but it just seems to fall flat in the interlude quest. Like, yeah, sure, Albedo being accused time and time again would have been a valid reason for him to become cynical. He was even pretty rude, saying like, "Aren't you really good at imitating? Why don't you just create a scar out of nowhere right now?" To the fake herder. when during the murder scene, which is pretty cool, I guess, after reading the story, and I could understand where he's coming from being accused for so long. But here's the thing, we don't see Albedo engaging with Herda. Like, yes, we did see Albedo sacrificing himself during this interlude quest, which I will not deny. Albedo being selfless and always saving people is part of his character. He literally sacrificed himself to save Benny from the 2.3 event. And I thought that was really good, like even though he was like joking about how bad luck Bennett was, he was still willing to put himself out there. During the trial in the interlude quest, we see how Albedo saved us when we were falling, creating the huge battle. Albedo is a selfless person, and I want to see more of that. In 2. In the other quests, in the other events, we see how Albedo created chairs for everyone when they were tired and stuff like that. But then in the interlude quest, when Amber didn't know about the fake Albedo and all the minions of Durin, Albedo was like, "Huh, you didn't know that? Eula is just so good at hiding." And I was like, that's not Albedo. Like that's not the Albedo that I've known and loved. You could say that yes, a character changes. And I agree with that. But I want to see what caused Albedo to change so much within the course of 6 months. We don't even have a manga scene or like some interim we don't have an interim YouTube video to tell us like, okay, this is what Albedo has been doing. As much as it's undesirable for Albedo's story to be outside of Genshin, I would still rather they do that because they did it for Alekino, they did it for Mavoika, they don't know, they did it for Farina, I guess. But they couldn't do it for Albedo. Like, what's wrong with them? And sometimes I really feel like there's a discrepancy between the marketing team as well as the story team. Because the marketing team really seems to be pushing out the fact that Albedo is a villain. He's going to destroy everything, which was what the story has been about. Even years ago, Genshin has released miscellaneous, like Dan Slave's monologue about Albedo. It's literally about how Albedo is suspicious and how, like if Albedo was to do anything funny, Dan Slave will have to step in as well. And in part of the Archon quest, I believe, or the Albedo quest, he did say that if I were to destroy everything, were you gonna stop me? So naturally, when this trailer came out, everyone thought that it's going to be a consolidation, the conclusion or the climax that we have been waiting for. But no, it's not. It's really not. I really want to see Albedo in action. Like he knows that Herda has a scar, but we don't know when and how he discovered it. Again, I know you would say that these kind of scenes are too long, no one really wants to listen to it. And I get it. But that's why it's necessary for Genshin to have a skip button, or at the very least, just give us a sketch. I don't even care if they give us a badly rendered sketch about Albedo meeting Herda and knowing about her scars, or like just a single fan art, like just a single wallpaper of them being together. Jean is like saying how like Albedo is really trying his best to defend Mondstadt, and you should go easy on him. That's pretty much why Jean wanted us to go easy on Albedo. But here's the thing, I don't see Albedo defending Mondstadt apart from the time where he saved Venti, apart from the time where he sacrificed himself to be accused of the murderer. Like these are the only two instances that I actually see Albedo in action. Like, yeah, sure, him staying up to listen to Sucrose yap about a theory and then telling Sucrose not to lie about the fact that she fell asleep was kind of romantic and sweet, and I bet that Albedo Rose shippers are all rejoicing, but I guess that's really not the point. I want to see Albedo sacrificing himself more. During the Durin quest, during the Dvaling quest, when Dvaling was wrecking the whole Mondstadt, Albedo didn't even have a glimpse of himself in it. Like at least Kaya and Diluc was shown to be fighting Abyss mages. We see, we always see Diluc and Kaya arguing about, the Knights of Avonia stuff, which is why we love them as characters and brothers, right? Because they're interesting. But Albedo, when has he ever sacrificed himself for Mondstadt? When has he really put himself out there? No, and the thing is, when I read Albedo's story in his own character story tab, Albedo doesn't want to be bought into the Knights of Favonius. No, I had the impression that Albedo was bought into the Knights of Favonius because his mother's friend is literally Alice, and Alice is, well known, Clee's mother, and Albedo knows her, so obviously he kind of has an easy ticket to go into Knights of Favonius. But Albedo himself, he wants his peace. He wants his alone time, which is why I thought that he's in Dragon Spine, right? And people are like, "Oh, have you seen Albedo? Albedo is just disappearing 90% of the time." And apparently, it's revealed that he's in Dragon Spine because he's investigating Durin, which I believe was part of the 1.2 quest that is not permanent. So if you don't know the 1.2 quest, you wouldn't know why Albedo is in Dragon Spine. And it's only in the limited events that we actually see Albedo investigating about Durin. Apart from that, Albedo just seems to be doing his regular research. He doesn't seem to be in Dragon Spine because he was investigating Durin and trying to find out a way to do like a full metal alchemist moment. No, and here's the thing. I do not mind if the trailer was about Albedo breaking his odds. You know, that was the whole point of the trailer, right? To tell us about what the story is about. But no, what we got instead was just like, oh, Albedo being accused and everything is fine. He goes on a trial, not to prove his innocence, but more like if he was worthy to create a human. Like he already knows that he's a synthetic human himself and how he's a threat to his own country, but we don't really see that. We don't see the conflicts between him and his own Archon, even though the trailer showed Venti holding his bow on top of the Archon on top of the Archon statue. That did not happen. And nothing remotely similar happened. I wouldn't mind if they gave us a more simplified version of Venti holding his weapon. Maybe they didn't show him doing his whole whirlpool. Maybe they just showed him holding his bow and shooting at the Helichos from the back. That would have been more satisfying than the scene not appearing at all. And I get it. People would say that, like, oh, it's just a marketing strategy. But no, they are just being manipulative and deceptive, which my point is being proven with the recent updates. Like I've been on YouTube a lot and I saw a lot of hate train. I saw a lot of hate regarding Genshin about how they are baiting their players, and I already saw that coming the moment they baited us about the Albedo story quest, the Albedo interlude quest, which was why I stopped playing Genshin. Like, yeah, sure, Genshin's power creep did get worse than I thought, and people are kind of riling about it. But I don't think the power creep is a problem if you're just running around doing ley lines and taking photos, which is what I do on a regular basis. But I can't bring myself to support a game that lies to its player base. Again, if the trailer is different from the story because they wanted the story to be better, that's fine. Sometimes plot twist happens, authors, the team, they gain new ideas to improve their experience, or there are times where they genuinely miss out and then they want to do better. But the problem now is that Genshin is not doing the game a favor. The trailer says one thing, the story is another, and now people are arguing about a skip button that's not going to be implemented anytime soon. No, I really feel that Genshin is ruining itself, and as much as I wanted to defend it because of nostalgia and because I genuinely love some of the character designs and the story potential, my story for Genshin honestly ends here. just can't bring myself to support them when the trailer is going to be different from the story. Like, if I know that the trailer is going to be different from the story, then there's no point of me watching the trailer, because what is going to be delivered is going to be different from the final product. And that's not marketing strategy. That's what we call a scam.